Today, we will focus on my daily trading strategies which I trade every week. We will also talk about the trade recaps from the last week. We traded a big pump until we covered the big balanced price range area. But why did we do that and how we decided on entries? Let's learn. Let's talk about what happened last week. It was a crazy week actually. First of all, let's check the chart with the weekly time frame and try to understand the price history. Everything starts with this little break here, which creates this strong high to protect the sellers. Later on, the whole structure shifts upwards. But what helps the structure to move into a certain location? Of course, the imbalances and liquidity. You can notice here price uses an imbalance area with inner liquidity sweep, filling up and moving up. Later on, it creates another large imbalance with little liquidity sweep and keeps moving up. But where? What is the location? Where is the price heading? Remember, all trends are useless unless they have a direction, a target to reach for, a destination. The first location actually was this large imbalance area. As you can see, price struggles in this area a lot. Actually, I expected a little pushback down here. However, as you can see, price destroyed this imbalance. So these failed imbalances become a support area later on. Remember, if an imbalance fails, it means that the opposite trend getting stronger. Now, this is the fun part. Where was the next location, our next target on the price? Yes, it was this BPR area. This is why my main bias was bullish towards this imbalance during the week. Now, let's look at the day trades on 5, 6, and the 7th December and talk about setups. Now you know that I want to carry the price that weekly BPR area above. What I need to do is find proper high quality setups to carry the price. I noticed this large imbalance area and price sweeps these internal equal lows. Now I know for a fact price is filled here. Very solid bullish structure. This is where my super box comes to life. I determine this low as a strong low, the protected low. I do not expect price to go lower in this area. I have now my overall area to look for points of interest. And this BPR area absolutely was magnificent. And magically, it is right below the Asia lows. Price sweeps Asia lows and taps my imbalance. What happens here is a small power of 3 structure, as you can see. And right after this imbalance, I enter the trade. This is a very, very high quality setup here. Everything plays perfect. So the same day, I also waited for New York to open as well, because 9:30 a.m. is where the main volatility comes to market, the real volume. Why do I want that? Because if I want to carry the price up to weekly BPR, I need that volatility, I need that volume. I need all those people around the world. At the same time, notice this point here. Very significant and important point. Current year high, previous day high, and the Monday high. Almost all institutional levels gathered here. So I have so many reasons to go up now. What I do here is manual micro scalping, a controlled yo-yo trade. Why I trade it manually here is because I have a very, very strong bias to go up. It is a simple strategy. If things go wrong, I will cut the trade. Simple as that. Finally, price hits the BPR And notice the round number here, 43K, which collides with the weekly BPR. This amplifies my target. Another reason for me. So the next day, after we fully filled the weekly BPR, I actually had a bit of a mixed bias. It is mainly caused by this equal low sweep and the open previous day high above. So my main idea here was actually bearish. However, what I wanted was this. Price sweeps all those open liquidity levels above and sharply drops. The problem was there was no very good trade setup to take here. I think at this point I got into something called knowing too much. When you know so many things, so many patterns, sometimes your personality splits in two. I saw this reverse optimal trade entry setup right at this BPR area. Right at this point, I tried a controlled long trade. There was no 100% setup that I really enjoyed. It is so simple, guys. If you are conflicted, confused, just reduce your risk. Risk less money. End of story. My ROTE setup was going great. However, as you can see, I was stuck in this trade for 6 hours. When you enter a trade, I want to end them in a couple of hours. I already saw the weakness and cut the trade around break even after 6 hours. Some days, you'll spend your whole day and go home empty-handed. This is another reality of trading. So the next day, price strongly dropped to this 30-minute imbalance right here. It also swept the previous day low as well. So what I was looking for here is a reaction trade. But the price dropped so fast and hard. I wanted to see a momentum loss first. I did not want to jump to any trade quickly. Let's check out lower time frames here. As you can see, the micro market structure shifted right here. But the price struggled after the shift. It took almost an entire day to cool off. As I said on Twitter, I mostly use higher time frames nowadays, or just focusing on quick scalps around the New York Open. After the momentum totally slowed, I noticed these great equal highs up top. I already had a great target to hit. And if you notice, right around the New York Open, the market started to shift upwards to clear that equal lows. Here, right at this point, my imbalance intersects with the previous day low level, which creates an amplified entry. That is my micro scalping entry point, carrying the price until the equal highs sweep. Very easy idea, quickly ended. I enjoy trades like this, which ends in 30 minutes, clean and quick. Well, this was the brief history of the last week, guys. See you on the next week. If you have completed the free trading course and feel like you improved your trading skills, but you need more, an extra, a boost, and you want to move to the next level in your trading life, my masterclass is ready for you. You'll learn liquidity, inefficiencies, and structure mastery deeply. And we will look at forward and reverse trading with momentum super boxes. You will learn how to confirm your entries with magic alignment system. Finally, you'll discover a strategy called YOYO strategy, which will open new doors for you about taking and managing trades. If you are interested, you can find links on my website on the description. Take care, friends, manage your risks, and stay safe.